The radio exploded with fear. "Lieutenant Harris is down. We're being slaughtered out here. We need you!" For 11 long years, Maya Kane hid her past. She buried Specter Phoenix, the fighter pilot they once called unstoppable. She lived as a mechanic, forgotten, stripped of the sky. But that cry tore open the silence like a blade. The trunk slammed wide, the helmet flashed, and the ghost of a legend rose again. Her hand clenched the throttle. One breath could decide who lived and who died. Engines roared alive, the ground trembled. The storm had found its hunter. When the world was breaking, the woman they thought dead chose to fly once more. This is VeteranBiker. Comment 1 if you're new, 2 if you've been with us, 3 if you ride with us every week. Like, subscribe, and stay to the end. The first thing to break is the sound. A jagged burst of voices tears through the net. Not words at first, only fear turned into static. Then meaning punches through like flares over a dark ridge. Harris is down, taking fire from 3 vectors. The sentence fractures, stitched back together by another voice swearing, then pleading. Someone breathes too close to a mic. Someone else counts, loses the count, starts over. Inside Falcon Ridge Command, the map is a living thing that won't stop shrinking. Red markers swarm and narrow, pulsing in a merciless rhythm. Blue icons flicker as if unsure they deserve to remain. Colonel Rains stands almost motionless, knuckles whitening around a coffee mug he forgot to drink from. His reflection in the glass shows a man trying not to lean on hope, because hope today feels like a fragile instrument you dare not touch. Officer Vega doesn't look at him when she speaks. She is all wrists and steadiness, fingers moving across consoles with the clean precision of a surgeon. Echo channels stabilized. "I've got Bravo flight on primary. Telemetry is dirty." She glances at a second monitor, and the pupils in her eyes pinch. No support within fuel window. Alpha's still an hour and 56. The room answers with what command rooms use instead of panic. More tasks. A staff sergeant calls range control and gets nothing but a message queue. A comtech tightens his jaw and builds a new relay tree out of patched. Line of sight stations perched on water towers and weather masts. An intelligence captain writes the word ambush on a legal pad, then crosses it out. Because it doesn't matter if the word is accurate, the outcome is the same. Rain sets the mug down so gently the ceramic doesn't dare click. "Vector overlays," he says. Vega stacks the layers, and the picture grows worse by becoming clearer. The red grouping isn't just numerous, it's smart. They're folding their approach like a hand of cards, fanning, constricting, leaving a blank plane of air where escape might have been. The net crackles again. A woman's voice, lower register, clipped breaths between phrases, flying the aircraft and the language at once. Bravo 3 defensive, missile tone, break west 2 on my high. Her words angle the entire room. People straighten unconsciously, heads turning without meaning to. The voice draws lines in the air sharper than the radar can. Vega leans toward the sound as if nearness might change the content. Major Lawn, picture updated. Recommend bearing 080. Angels 23. You've got terrain to mask low if needed. Another burst. A pilot coughing. Someone saying flare, flare, like a prayer. A single, long tone. Merciless. Followed by a muted curse that doesn't stop anything. Rains doesn't bark. He doesn't have to, "All right, people, build me a corridor. I don't care if it's made of air and goodwill. Give them something to run down." They try because trying is the only ritual they have to keep the floor under them. But the corridor refuses to exist. Numbers don't become space just because you need them to. The map keeps tightening like a belt on the wrong throat. Beyond the command building, the base hums with the day's heat. The sun, turning the tarmac into a plate that holds the world's worst meal. Service trucks idle, hoses sleep in loose coils. A row of helmets sits on a shelf like skulls chosen for their shine. Somewhere, a mechanic swears and laughs in the same breath, a shared language of people who make machines behave. In the far wing of a maintenance block, behind an office door that sticks. In damp weather, a small room keeps its secrets by being ordinary. A narrow bed. A metal locker dented in 2 places by luggage that never quite fit. A desk with a half-finished maintenance checklist and a pencil worn down to a grudging nub. The window looks at the side of a hangar wall, and a slice of sky thin as a vein. Maya Kane sits on the edge of the bed with her boots unlaced, one palm braced on her. Knee, the other turned upward as if something might fall into it besides light. In the hallway, a radio propped on a cleaning cart mutters out the base's life in chopped syllables, gate checks, fuel loads, the eternal arithmetic of sorties and spares. She isn't listening to that radio. She's listening for another one, the kind that doesn't need a speaker to be heard. When the scream comes, no, not a scream, a stripped-down sentence filled with the kind of urgency that leaves no room for extra syllables. She doesn't stand, not immediately. The body moves slower than the truth. The voice on the net is a voice she knows in the way a person knows the shape of a road driven in storms, not by sight, but by muscle memory and breath. Lieutenant Harris, lost. We're losing altitude. Bravo needs air now. Now! The last word is a strike of metal against metal. No echo, just impact. In command, Vega's whisper is a kind of mercy she can't afford to say aloud. They've lost one. She doesn't look at Rains when she says it. Faces are fragile in moments like this. Rains closes his eyes for half a heartbeat, a private funeral he cannot attend. Scramble the spare. I don't care if it's pre-flighted by committee, if it holds fuel and will climb. I want it pointed at the fight. He knows this is theater. The spare is not a magic trick. The spare will be late, and late is a synonym they don't use for never. A private edges closer to Vega's console with a message slip and doesn't put it down because the content chooses the courier. Vega takes it, reads it, folds it in half with tidy fury, and tucks it under the keyboard like it will smother disaster. Maya's fingers curl, unfold. She stands with care, as if the floor had learned to tilt. The plainness of her room feels indecent now, a disguise stripped of consent. She crosses to the locker, opens it without hesitation born of repetition, jacket, folded spare gloves, in a plastic bag the color of old rain. A photograph not of a person but of a runway at dawn. Beneath the stack of shirts that all look like the base, a small key waits. Dingy brass rubbed clean at the bow by a particular set of nerves. The key is ordinary enough to insult memory. She takes it anyway. Outside, a siren catches, loses its voice, catches again. Somewhere on the flight line, an aircraft coughs into life. A sequence of clacks and whines that resolve into a single note that drills the air into obedience. 2 airmen jog across concrete with a cable between them, not because it will save anyone, but because moving is the only available antidote to helplessness. The hallway smells of solvent and heat. Maya locks her door without knowing why a lock matters anymore, the reflex older than the day. She walks, not fast, not slow, her stride the unremarkable pace of someone between tasks. People step aside without being asked. Some of them know her face. None of them know the contour of the shadow that keeps pace at her shoulder. In command, Vega finds a frequency that will carry, and the architecture of her voice becomes an anchor. Bravo Flight, Falcon Ridge. You're at Angels 2-1 with terrain at 1-6. Recommend westward jink to shed tail. Advising flare pattern Zulu. Repeat Zulu. She nods at Rains before he can ask. There is nothing left to offer but clarity. Another call breaks in and Major Lorne's tone has teeth in it now. Confirm I've got 2 foxes sniffing my tail at 5. Harris is gone. I'm Winchester on 1. The rest dissolves into the long, humorless sound of a warning nobody wants. Vega's knuckles go pale on the edge of the console. She keeps her voice practical. Bravo lead, copy. Marking you a gap east by 10. It's thin. She doesn't say it's thinner than your wingspan because truth without utility is cruelty, and they have enough of that. Rains leans toward the glass, toward the screen, toward anything that will let him be closer to the people he's losing by increments. If they can't go through, he murmurs, they'll have to go over. He doesn't add what everyone knows. Up is a story you can only tell if your engines can afford the ending. Maya stops at a door almost everyone walks past without noticing. The paint is tired, the hinges complain, it is not locked often. She unlocks it. The storage room is cooler, the air flavored with oil and cardboard. Racks of parts sit in labeled quiet, gaskets, clamps, lengths of hose soft as sleeping serpents. At the back, beneath a shelf of out-of-service instruments preserved out of stubbornness, stands a low metal trunk with corners rounded by years of being kicked under things that had to be moved. The padlock on it has no right to look dignified and yet somehow does. She kneels. The concrete prints itself into her knees through the fabric. The key finds the keyhole without hunting. Hands accustomed to patience turn once. Click. The simplest of mechanical promises kept. She doesn't lift the lid right away. The lid is both weight and witness. Her palms rest on the metal. The temperature transfers through skin and bone like a fact older than language. The room becomes smaller. The base becomes a ring of noise a long distance away. The rest of her life distills to a hinge and a breath. In command, the breath is not Rains or Vega's or the nameless chorus with headsets. Clamped to their hair, it belongs to the room itself, sucked in and held. A blue marker on the screen stutters and then steadies. Vega speaks. Every syllable wrapped in calm she welds in place by will. Bravo lead, you've got a tail warning on your 6. Recommend brake now. Now. The word now lands like a gavel. The reply is a sound Vega will remember parts of in dreams, a grunt, the sharp metallic edge of a scream cut off by training, the hollow thud of a body remembering it is mortal. Then Major Lorne again, thin but still there. I'm defensive. 3 left. I need... The sentence doesn't end. There are sentences you cannot complete and still live. Maya lifts the lid. It isn't dramatic. Metal slides on metal with a shushing sound that undercuts the theater of it. Inside, the canvas lining has faded where it touched air and stayed true where it didn't. Beneath a folded flight suit that has kept its shape by remembering a body, a helmet waits. It isn't pretty. The paint remembers gravel rash and ladder scuffs. The visor shows a faint line where a glove thumb always smudged and always cleared. Along the shell, beneath layers of careful cleaning, a mark persists the way a scar becomes part of a face, a phoenix, stylized. Wings not spread wide in brag but tucked for speed, head angled as if listening for a call not everyone can hear. Her fingertips hover, then settle on the emblem. It is smoother than the rest, as if hundreds of passes have polished it into a confession. She doesn't close her eyes, not all the way. Her lashes lower just enough to thin the world. In command, Vega presses 2 fingers against the bridge of her nose and then drops them, annoyed at the indulgence. Colonel, she says, voice returning to duty, if Bravo can get to Angels 2 to 5, they can clear the... Rains doesn't answer her. He hears, distantly, the intake of a jet somewhere on the field coming up through its checklist. He thinks about the words you are supposed to say in moments like this. Steady on, you're not alone, keep breathing, and knows that sometimes the only sentence that matters is the one no one can say for you. Maya takes the helmet out of the trunk and rests it on her lap. The weight is exactly what she remembers and nothing like it. Memory had shaved off grams and added others out of spite. She turns it, inspects the connectors, runs her thumb along the edge where the seal seats. Muscle memory tickles her forearms. The itch of straps, the bite of buckles, the strange intimacy of machinery that holds the head still while the world tries to spin it off. Her mouth tastes of metal, though she hasn't put the visor near it. She sets the helmet on the concrete beside her boot and sits back on her heels, palms flat on her thighs, a posture that would look like prayer if she were someone else. In the hallway, a floor polisher trundles past, its hum exactly the wrong size for this moment. She looks up, not at the ceiling, but at the thin slice of daylight that slants through a high vent and paints a stripe on the opposite wall. Dust motes hang in it like slow snow. The light is the color of late afternoon about to turn. She imagines people out on the line squinting into that light, and for a heartbeat her chest squeezes with a feeling that has no vocabulary. The radio in the hall protests again, a desperate instrument pushed past tolerance. This is Bravo lead. Fuel state is critical, too spiked. Any asset with teeth, answer. The last word breaks. It doesn't need to be whole to be understood. Maya reaches back into the trunk. Beneath the suit, below a pair of gloves mated by a band of tape like lovers who might be separated if you didn't warn the world, lies a small rectangle of cloth folded twice. She hesitates, then leaves it where it is. Some things you don't take until you're sure you can carry them. She closes the trunk lightly, not all the way. The lid rests against its own momentum and stops just shy of sealing. She doesn't lock it. The key stays warm in her fist. She doesn't remember closing her hand around it, only that the bones of her fingers have found a familiar architecture and agreed with it. In command, Vega turns to Rains and finally asks the question she's been holding behind her teeth. Sir, do we call for emergency authority to launch without? Not yet, Rains says, and helplessness makes him sound kinder than he means to be. Not yet. The base holds its breath with them. Heat wavers above the runway. A line of gulls perches along a far fence. Heads all turn to the same rumor. A wrench clatters somewhere and someone laughs too hard at nothing because laughter is a tool, and tools are what you have when miracles are currently out of stock. Maya picks up the helmet again. She doesn't put it on. Not yet. She stands, and the motion stretches a seam at the knee of her coveralls, where 100 other movements have asked too much and been forgiven. The key vanishes into a pocket she could find in the dark. Her other hand rests on the curve of the shell, fingers spread like a promise made to herself. In the corridor, footsteps find a rhythm, like drums calling a city to wake. The room gives back its cool as she leaves, the door sighing around its frame, the ordinary air closing behind her. Out on the main floor, a warning light stutters to life, red pulsing against sheeted metal, bathing the long line of aircraft in an accidental ceremony. She walks toward the sound, not quickly, not slowly, as if the distance between where she is and where she needs to be were already measured and agreed upon by someone who knows the weight of time. Behind her, the trunk waits with its lid a finger's width from closed, a held breath made into metal. Across the base, the radio says it again, stripped to the bone. We need you. The hangar is never truly quiet. Even at midday, when sorties are launched and the line is supposed to be clear, there are voices bouncing off steel beams, clanks of tools echoing through the bays, and the high whine of carts carrying tanks of oxygen or racks of ordnance. Today, the soundscape is thinner, hollowed out by absence. Mechanics who normally joke over wrenches have vanished toward shelters or command posts. Every motion that remains seems sharpened, purposeful, stripped of leisure. Maya Kane moves through this emptied world like a figure carved from something heavier than flesh. Her boots strike the concrete with the regular cadence of someone who has decided not to second guess. She keeps the helmet tucked beneath her arm, its surface absorbing the light, turning it dull instead of reflective. The glow from overhead bulbs traces faint scars on the shell, each mark a testament to fights most here have never heard of. She emerges onto the main floor where jets crouch in their cradles, hulking predators half-leashed by chains and hoses. Heat waves shimmer above their bodies as though each is impatient to breathe fire. Near the nose of one F-22, Lieutenant Marlowe lounges against a maintenance ladder, posture casual enough to annoy even in calmer times. He notices her, and the curve of his grin is meant for an audience. Well, if it isn't Greasehand Kane, he calls, loud enough for the few remaining crew to hear. Careful with that helmet. It's not a souvenir. The remark draws thin laughter, brittle as glass. Marlowe expects her to react. Embarrassment, retreat, maybe a defensive quip. Instead, she passes him without pause, eyes on the machine's fuselage, fingertips, brushing a rivet line with the delicacy of someone tracing a scar. That small gesture unsettles him more than any retort could. Chief Dalton, standing half in shadow near a tool chest, watches this exchange without comment. At 60, his expression has been honed by decades of battle damage reports and memorial ceremonies. He does not laugh with Marlowe's circle. His gaze lingers on Maya's hands, how they rest on throttle housing, how her knuckles tighten when she checks a seam, like a musician rediscovering a forgotten instrument. "Enough chatter," Dalton says at last, voice pitched low but carrying. "We've got alerts running red across the field. Clear the ladder, Lieutenant." Marlowe bristles but obeys, stepping aside with a flourish meant to reclaim some pride. Maya climbs into the cockpit without acknowledging him. The rungs creak under her weight, and for a moment the entire hangar feels suspended, eyes following her ascent as though she is climbing into a role no one had considered hers. Inside command, Vega presses a hand against her headset, straining to catch transmissions that seem to bleed desperation through static. "Bravo 2, check altitude. You're bleeding speed." Her voice falters as another blue icon fades from the screen. She doesn't announce the loss aloud this time. Announcements feel like funerals, and the room is already crowded with ghosts. Colonel Rains notices the hush spreading across the floor. He turns toward the window overlooking the hangar bay just as Maya settles into the seat. Her silhouette against the canopy makes something twist in his chest, a recognition he cannot quite name. Vega follows his gaze, then stiffens. Even from this distance she can make out the curve of that helmet. Her throat goes dry. On the floor, Sergeant Pike intercepts Maya before she can complete pre-flight checks. "You don't belong here," he blurts, though the words sound unconvincing even to him. The authority in her posture strips the challenge of weight. She meets his stare through the visor, which she has pulled down in one smooth motion. "Step aside," she says, tone steady but carrying a charge that slices through the space. For an instant, Pike imagines he is facing not a mechanic, but an officer used to commanding lives in the air. His boots feel heavy, glued to the deck, until instinct finally yields and he shifts aside. Dalton's lips press into something like a smile, small, uncelebrated, but real. He mutters to no one in particular. Some things don't wash off. Meanwhile, the sirens continue their relentless song. Pilots who have not yet launched sprint across the tarmac, silhouettes cutting sharp angles against the sun. The control tower broadcasts clipped commands, layering urgency over urgency until even the ground vibrates with it. Maya runs her gloved fingers across the controls. Every switch has muscle memory waiting to be awakened. Systems blink alive beneath her touch, displays blooming into color. The cockpit smells faintly of heated electronics and the faint metallic tang of oxygen. It feels less like entering a machine and more like stepping into a skin she once shed and thought never to wear again. From the command center, Vega's voice rises, tight with incredulity. "Colonel, that's the Phoenix insignia. That's her." The room stirs with whispers, fragments of recognition traveling like sparks on dry tinder. Rains narrows his eyes, unwilling to believe too quickly. Yet when Maya's voice crackles through the frequency, calm, measured, unhurried, it cuts him deeper than confirmation codes. "Control, this is Phoenix 1. Systems green. The syllables carry authority no one can counterfeit. The silence afterward is thick, every ear attuned, every doubt suspended." Dalton exhales through his nose, a release years in the making. "She's back," he murmurs, but the words feel insufficient. It isn't merely that she has returned, it's that she never truly left the sky at all. Marlowe, still standing at the base of the ladder, looks pale now. The sneer is gone, replaced by an expression caught between awe and regret. He mutters something about transfer papers, though no one listens. Engines ignite with a cough that becomes a roar. The hangar shakes as air funnels through turbines, hungry for flight. Heat shimmers along the floor, and crew members shield their faces from the blast. Every motion, every sound funnels into inevitability. A legend is about to launch. Vega, hands trembling slightly as she steadies her microphone, addresses Rains without turning her head. "Sir, we have to clear her. They're dying out there." Rains holds the gaze of the map for a long moment, then nods. His voice, when it comes, is stripped of hesitation. "Let her go." With that, Maya taxis toward the runway, each wheel rotation a drumbeat of return. The canopy reflects the flashing hazard lights, painting her face in alternating strokes of crimson and gold. Beneath the helmet, her jaw sets, not with pride, but with a responsibility that has no end. Outside, the world waits. Sky and fire, friend and foe, memory and present, all converging on a single choice she can no longer avoid. The runway clears, the nose tilts, engines scream their challenge to gravity, and the woman the world thought buried in silence lifts back into the storm. Her final transmission before vanishing into the clouds is not a plea, not a question, but a statement that makes even veterans in the command room shiver. Specter Phoenix airborne. Cloud towers rose above Falcon Ridge like walls of stone, sunlight splitting through their jagged seams. Maya eased her jet upward, each adjustment careful, precise, the machine climbing as though it had been waiting for her touch all these years. Vapor streamed past the canopy, veiling the sky in silver ribbons. The silence inside the cockpit was deceptive, her headset pulsed with fragments of desperation. 2 on my 6. Harris is gone. Bravo 2 losing fuel. Need help now. Cara Lawn's voice tore across the channel, clipped but raw. In the command center, Colonel Rains stared at the tactical screen where enemy symbols swarmed like a tightening noose. Blue icons flickered, one winking out for good. Around him, operators bent over their consoles, every movement sharpened by urgency. Vega, voice steady despite the tremor in her fingers, transmitted, "Bravo flight, hold position. Phoenix 1 is inbound. 30 seconds. Just 30 seconds." The room absorbed her words like medicine it didn't quite trust. Dalton, standing quietly against the wall, recognized what the others had yet to accept. Maya Kane wasn't improvising. Every control input, every subtle climb spoke of training so deep it became instinct. She hadn't come back to guess. She had come back to finish what she once left undone. Breaking through a slit in the clouds, Maya spotted movement, 2 enemy jets slicing the sky in a shallow pincer. A third shadow lingered farther back, deliberate, patient. She noted their spacing, their rhythm. They were good, disciplined hunters, but good wasn't always enough. She let her path sag just slightly, as if distracted. Predators are drawn to weakness. They bought the bait. The lead angled toward her, nose swinging in anticipation. She gave them another hint, an almost lazy drift, inviting their confidence. Then, in an instant, she inverted, pulled hard, and slipped beneath their noses into a bank of cloud. Their radar lost her, their formation wavered. In the command center, operators gasped as Phoenix 1's marker vanished, then reappeared 2 sectors away. Vega muttered under her breath, half in awe, "She's using the weather like armor." Maya re-emerged behind the wingman, who had broken discipline to chase. He was stretched, vulnerable, exactly where she wanted him. But she didn't fire. Patience would yield more than a single shot. "Bravo lead," she called, voice measured. "Bring your damaged bird south 5 degrees. You'll feel exposed for a count of 5. Then you won't." Lorne didn't argue. She obeyed, dragging Bravo 2 along. Smoke trailed from the wounded jet, a visible lure in the sky. The enemy lead saw it and lunged, focus narrowing to prey. His wingman scrambled to keep pace but was already a beat behind. The trap was closing. Inside command, tensions spooled tighter. Rains folded his arms, refusing to speak. Vega tracked the unfolding geometry, recognizing the trap only as it snapped shut. Dalton exhaled slowly, lips quirking with something close to pride. Marlowe, pale at the window, whispered to himself, too softly for anyone to hear. Maya threaded her aircraft through a shadowed bank and climbed, her HUD painting the enemy pair in clear green outlines. The lead bore down on the crippled Bravo jet, blind to what hunted behind him. The wingman, sensing danger but unable to locate it, began a turn too late. "Bravo lead, when I say break, you break. Bravo 2. Do the same, even if your bird feels ready to fall apart." Her tone was calm, surgical, leaving no room for debate. The air thinned, every heartbeat stretching. In command, the room leaned forward unconsciously. Vega gripped the edge of her console. Dalton stopped blinking. Rain stared like a man witnessing history try to repeat itself in reverse. Maya's thumb rested on the switch. She drew in a steadying breath, not ritual, just necessity. Timing was everything. 1 second too early and the enemy would recover. 1 second too late and her allies would die. "Break," she ordered. Lorne yanked her jet aside, Bravo 2 stumbling behind her. The enemy lead followed, convinced he was sealing the kill. In that instant, geometry inverted. Maya's climb intersected their path. Her nose locked onto a corridor that existed for the space of a breath and then would vanish. Tone buzzed in her headset, solid lock. She exhaled. Across the net, Kara's voice cracked with disbelief. "Who the hell are you?" Maya almost answered. Almost. But the call sign was already enough. What mattered was not her name, not the years she had spent in hiding, but the fact that she was here, in this sky, at this moment, turning chaos into choreography. She didn't reply with words. Instead, she pressed the switch, unleashing fire into the storm. And as missiles streaked toward their mark, she whispered one truth, quiet enough to be personal, clear enough to echo in every headset, "You're not alone." The missile streaked forward, carving a silver line through the sky. A heartbeat later, a fireball bloomed against the blue, bright enough to make even the sun blink. The lead hostile disappeared in an orange blossom that collapsed into smoke and fragments. Shards spiraled down toward the valleys below, trailing black scars across the daylight. In the command center, the room went utterly still. Vega removed her hand from the console as if burned. For years, stories about Specter Phoenix had been whispered, dismissed as embellishment or fantasy. Now those rumors unfolded in front of them, fact written in fire. Colonel Rains didn't allow himself a smile, but his jaw eased as though he had released a weight he had carried too long. The wingman tried to recover, snapping into a climb, desperate to put space between himself and the hunter he suddenly realized was behind him. Maya didn't chase blindly. She adjusted, using the cloud edges like curtains to mask her angles, showing herself only in flashes. Every maneuver reminded her body of a rhythm it hadn't forgotten, the choreography of energy and patience. Falcon Ridge, tally 1 hostile remaining in immediate sector, she reported, her tone steady. Trailer unaccounted for. Copy, Vega replied quickly, voice clipped to hide awe. Bravo flight, rejoin south. Phoenix 1 has the sky. Cara Lawn's reply was laced with disbelief. Phoenix? That can't be. Static ate the end of her words. Then, quieter, almost to herself, you died. Maya didn't answer. She rolled left, found the wingman cutting too sharp, and slid behind him. Her crosshairs glowed red. She fired. Another eruption tore through the air, scattering debris that tumbled helplessly through the void. Gasps rose in the command room. One of the operators whispered what many thought, but none dared say aloud. She makes the impossible look simple. But there was no time for reverence. The cautious third adversary broke cover, diving from altitude with missiles already primed. Warning tones screamed in Maya's headset. Instinct seized her before thought. She rolled into a spiral descent, pulling so hard the straps bit deep into her shoulders. The jet trembled, wings humming on the edge of their limits. The pursuing aircraft locked again, tone shrill. Maya exhaled and executed a maneuver that had once been a rumor among pilots, a sequence she had devised years before but never taught. A sudden climb from the bottom of a spiral, then a knife-edge dive that forced the pursuer into overcorrection. To anyone watching, the move looked reckless, nearly suicidal. To her, it was art. The hostile overshot, losing position. Maya seized the instant, looped back, and slid behind him. She squeezed the trigger. Fire blossomed a third time. The last of the predators fell away in fragments, vanishing into the folds of cloud. Falcon Ridge, she transmitted, breath-controlled, sector clear. For a long moment, there was only static, the heavy quiet of disbelief. Then Vega's voice broke through, trembling despite herself, all hostiles neutralized. Confirmed, the silence in command dissolved into motion. Operators leaned back, some muttering thanks they hadn't voiced in years. Dalton, arms crossed, allowed himself the faintest nod. Marlowe stood pale, ashamed of every word he had spoken to the woman who now flew like a storm turned human. Out in the sky, Bravo flight steadied their formation, the wounded jet limping but alive. Kara's voice returned, ragged. "Whoever you are, you just saved us." Maya finally spoke, not as confession, but as declaration. Specter Phoenix, operational. The net went silent again, stunned by the resurrection of a legend. In the command center, Rains turned slowly toward Vega. She gave a single confirming nod. "She's back," Vega whispered. Above the battlefield, Maya leveled her jet, scanning the horizon. Smoke plumes marked where her enemies had fallen. The air was calm again, deceptively gentle, as though it had not just been carved by violence. Her hand steadied on the controls, yet inside her chest, old memories stirred. She thought of the night she had buried her wings, the funerals she had avoided, the guilt that had held her to the ground. And now here she was again, carving new scars into the sky. She had returned not for glory, not for redemption, but because the call had left no other choice. Duty had a voice, and it had screamed. Back at Falcon Ridge, Vega opened her mic one final time, announcing to every frequency, to all units, acknowledge, the legend is real. The Phoenix flies again. The words rolled across the net, carried to every cockpit, every ground station, every trembling hand gripping a console. Hope, once drained away, now surged back like oxygen to lungs long deprived. And, in that charged air, Maya Kane tightened her grip on the throttle and whispered to herself, unheard by anyone else, "Not this time. Not ever again." Her jet banked toward the horizon, where more battles waited. High above the mountains, the horizon stretched endless and cold, but Maya felt the heat of battle still pulsing in her hands. Her jet steadied, the engines humming at a pitch that was less machine and more heartbeat. Below her, 3 columns of black smoke rose from the wreckage she had left behind. The sky was momentarily hers, but it did not feel like victory. It felt like a wound reopening. "Bravo flight, regroup," she transmitted, voice clipped but firm. "Check fuel, check systems, hold altitude." One by one, replies trickled in, lawns shaken but intact, the others carrying exhaustion like lead in their throats. The crippled jet struggled to keep pace, its smoke trail thinning but not gone, still alive, still flying. That counted. In the command center, Vega updated the plot, her hands moving swiftly across the console. Phoenix 1 clear. 3 hostiles eliminated, 1 disengaged. Bravo elements returning to friendly air. The room exhaled collectively, but the relief was fragile, a thin glass that could shatter at the next alarm. Dalton's eyes narrowed, studying the green trace that marked Maya's jet. He had seen maneuvers before, extraordinary feats of flying, but what she had just pulled off wasn't a trick. It was instinct woven into precision, the kind of flying that rewrote engagements in seconds. He muttered to himself, "She doesn't just fly the jet. She bends the sky to her will." But Maya wasn't basking in awe. She pressed her back against the seat, sweat cooling against her neck. For the first time in years, she had allowed herself to touch the storm again, and already memories were clawing at her, memories of a night when a squad had waited for her return and never saw it. She shoved the thoughts aside, locking focus back onto the present. "Bravo lead," she called. "Set course for rally point Charlie 7. Keep defensive posture. I'll cover your withdrawal." Lorne hesitated. "That's suicide, Phoenix. You can't hold against numbers if more are inbound." A faint smile ghosted across Maya's lips. "Watch me," she cut wide, positioning herself between Bravo's retreat and the empty horizon, daring whatever remained to show itself. The clouds swirled below, and every shape in them looked like the shadow of a fighter waiting to emerge. Inside command, Rains leaned toward Vega. "She's not just covering them, she's baiting the sky to come for her." Vega's jaw clenched. "And if it does, Colonel?" Rains gave no answer, because the truth was plain. No reinforcement could reach her in time. This was her fight, her decision. The minutes dragged heavy with anticipation. Then, on the edge of radar, new blips appeared. 2 signatures, fast and converging. Vega's voice sharpened. Phoenix 1. 2 bogies approaching from East Quadrant. Altitude match. Distance closing. Copy, Maya replied, calm as if she had been expecting it. She adjusted her heading, sliding lower to use the broken ridges as partial cover. Every sense heightened. Every nerve hummed. This was the part she had been born for. The newcomers streaked into visual range, grey silhouettes slicing across the sun, skilled pilots, judging by their spacing and the discipline of their approach. They weren't reckless like the first pair. These moved like predators who had studied their prey. Maya tested their reflexes, feinting left, then diving sharply. They mirrored her moves too smoothly. She knew the type. Seasoned, patient, dangerous. Good, she thought. The harder they push, the more alive I feel. The duel unfolded across the heavens, spirals of contrails marking each exchange. Maya rolled her jet inverted, diving through a canyon of cloud, the enemy in pursuit. She pulled sharply up, forcing her jet nearly vertical, then cut throttle to bleed speed. One enemy screamed past, overshooting. She snapped back on the throttle, sliding behind him. The lock tone sang. She fired. A blossom of fire lit the clouds, scattering shrapnel. 1 down. The second enemy pilot didn't panic. He looped wide, keeping distance, probing for her mistake. Maya felt sweat bead under her gloves. This one was calculating, not impulsive. He wanted her to commit. Falcon Ridge, I merged with one hostile. Angels 2-5, she reported evenly. Engage defensive. The command room leaned into her words. Every screen tracked the twisting dance. Vega gripped her earpiece tighter, silently willing the outcome. Maya executed the spiral fade, the maneuver she had once sworn never to use again. A spiraling climb, then a sudden vertical dive so sharp the airframe groaned. The enemy hesitated just long enough. She rolled through his blind spot, locked and released. The sky erupted again. The second adversary vanished in fire and smoke, fragments raining through the sunlight. Falcon Ridge, hostile neutralized, Maya said, breath steady, though her body trembled from the G-forces. The room broke into scattered applause before discipline clamped it down. Even Rains couldn't disguise the relief in his eyes. Vega closed her eyes briefly, whispering, she's rewriting the fight single-handed. For Maya, it wasn't triumph. It was resolve. Each kill was less about glory and more about debt. Each missile fired was a vow to the memory of the squad she once failed. Cara Lorne's voice crackled again, softer now. Phoenix, whoever you are, I owe you my life. Maya's reply was measured. Just get your people home. Bravo flight turned west, limping but alive. Maya held the rear guard until their signals cleared the threat envelope. Only then did she allow herself to ease off, the sky widening, her pulse beginning to level. But the quiet didn't soothe her. It accused her. Every time she blinked, she saw ghosts in the cockpit glass. She had won today, but the war inside her had only sharpened. She keyed the mic one last time. Falcon Ridge, Phoenix 1, sector secure. Returning to base. The response came with reverence. Vega didn't bother hiding. Copy, Phoenix. Welcome home. Maya banked toward Falcon Ridge, the engines purring, the sun breaking across her canopy. Behind her, the sky carried the smoke of enemies destroyed. Ahead of her, a reckoning waited, because landing would mean facing not just the command staff, but the past she had tried to bury. The landing gear kissed the tarmac with a muted thump, and the F-22 rolled down the strip, trailing vapor from overheated brakes. Maya guided the jet with hands that showed no tremor, though her muscles ached from hours of tension compressed into minutes. As she slowed to taxi speed, the radio crackled with Vega's restrained voice. "Falcon Ridge Tower to Phoenix 1, welcome back." No cheers, no applause, not yet. The base held its breath as the fighter wheeled toward the hangar. Ground crews scrambled into position, their reflective vests glowing in the afternoon sun. Some moved with drill sergeant efficiency, but others slowed unconsciously, watching as if unsure whether the figure inside was entirely real. Maya powered down, switches clicking in precise sequence. When the canopy hissed open, hot air rushed in, carrying the scent of scorched metal. She stayed seated a moment, helmet resting in her lap. The silence after combat was always heavier than the noise itself. Then she climbed down the ladder, boots meeting the deck with a firmness that made the onlookers straighten. Dozens of eyes tracked her. No one spoke. Even the wind seemed unwilling to intrude. Colonel Rains broke the stillness, stepping from the assembled officers with measured strides. His expression was carved from discipline, but the flicker in his gaze betrayed awe. "Major Maya Kane," he said at last, using a rank she hadn't heard in more than a decade. "Specter Phoenix." Maya removed her helmet. Strands of damp hair clung to her forehead, her face streaked with fatigue yet sharpened by purpose. She met his stare evenly. "Colonel." Behind Rains, Cara Lorne approached, her flight suit scorched from shrapnel, her eyes wide with disbelief. She stopped short, searching Maya's features as though she were looking at a ghost. "It can't be you," she murmured. "We all thought—" "You thought right," Maya interrupted, her voice low. "I buried the pilot but the sky didn't let me stay gone." The gathering murmured, officers shifting uncomfortably, crew exchanging glances. They were witnessing the resurrection of a legend they had dismissed as rumor. Dalton, leaning on a cane near the hangar wall, watched with quiet satisfaction. He had known from the first touch of her hands on the jet. Vega stepped forward, her usual composure shaken. "You saved Bravo Flight. You saved all of us." Her tone carried both admiration and shame, for she had underestimated the woman standing before her. Maya shook her head. "Don't thank me. The cost is still written in smoke out there." She looked toward the horizon, where black columns rose in testimony to the fallen. Rains gestured for attention, his voice formal but weighted. "For today's actions, I am prepared to recommend immediate reinstatement with promotion. This base, this country, needs a pilot like you in the fight again." The offer hung in the air like a live wire. Whispers rippled through the crowd, some faces lit with hope, others tightened with unease. Maya let the silence stretch before answering. "No, Colonel." Her refusal was soft but absolute. "I didn't come back to wear bars again. I came because someone called for help. That's all." The declaration struck harder than a shout. Cara frowned, unable to understand. "You could lead squadrons. You could change the course of this war." Maya met her eyes. "Leadership isn't always in the cockpit. Pilots die when machines fail. If I can make sure these birds fly true, if I can pass on what the manuals can't teach, then maybe fewer will fall the way mine did." Dalton nodded approvingly, his gravelly voice carrying across the hangar. "Spoken like someone who's seen the price. Sometimes the greatest gift isn't flying higher, it's keeping others in the air." The crowd absorbed her words, the weight of them settling differently on each listener. Young airmen looked at her with reverence, veterans with recognition of scars unseen. Rains studied her, then inclined his head. "Very well. You'll have authority to train, to shape, to safeguard. If that is your choice, it will be respected." Maya exhaled slowly, as though releasing years of tension. She extended her hand. "Then let's begin by fixing what's broken." Vega stepped forward and clasped it, her voice steady once more. "It will be an honor to work under you, whatever title you wear." Around them the mood shifted. Soldiers who had frozen in disbelief began to straighten with pride. The myth had stepped down from the clouds and chosen to walk among them. Later, as dusk painted the sky in bruised colors, Maya stood at the edge of the runway, watching Bravo Flight's battered jets return. Mechanics rushed to meet them, medics waiting with stretchers, but the pilots climbed out alive. Lorne removed her helmet and caught Maya's gaze. A nod passed between them, acknowledgement of survival, of debts that words could not settle. Behind Maya, whispers spread. The Phoenix was not just a story. She was flesh, blood, and willpower. Yet inside, Maya felt the tug of memory. 4 faces she would never see again, voices silenced by hesitation long ago. Tonight she had chosen not to command the sky, but to guard those who still would. As floodlights flickered on and the base returned to routine, the legend of Specter Phoenix shifted shape. She was no longer only the ace who vanished. She was the guardian who had returned not to reclaim glory, but to forge a safer path for others. Night had barely settled, but Falcon Ridge glowed like a city unwilling to sleep. The hangars hummed with generators, headlights swept across the tarmac, and the scent of jet fuel still clung to the air. Yet, the heart of the base was not in its machines. It was gathered in the debriefing hall, where silence pressed heavier than the roar of engines. Maya Kane sat at the head of a long table, helmet set aside, hair pulled back hastily. Across from her, Colonel Rains scanned a stack of reports, his face betraying nothing. Beside him, Vega kept her posture taut, hands clasped tightly, while Lorne sat with shoulders slumped, exhaustion etched into every line. The room brimmed with anticipation, every officer and mechanic waiting for the verdict. Rains closed the folder, his knuckles resting on its cover. "What you accomplished today saved lives," he said, his tone slow and deliberate. "But it also exposed us. If you fly under that call sign again, every enemy commander will know the Phoenix is alive. They'll come hunting for you." Maya didn't flinch. "Let them. I didn't step into that cockpit to hide." Her words carried weight, not arrogance. Dalton, seated in the back row, leaned forward on his cane. "She's right. Legends draw fire, but they also give our people something no supply drop can deliver: hope." The officers murmured, some nodded, others frowned. Vega's voice cut through. "Hope won't matter if we lose her again. We have to protect what she represents." The argument swelled until Rains raised a hand. "Enough! What matters is her choice." He looked directly at Maya. "Do you want to rejoin the roster as a combat pilot, or continue in the role you've claimed: trainer, guardian, builder of what comes next?" Every eye turned to her. For a moment, the air in the room felt still, waiting to be broken. Maya breathed deeply. "I will not take another squadron into the sky. I've carried that weight before, and I will not repeat it. But I won't vanish into grease and shadows either. My place is here, ensuring no one goes into battle unprepared, ensuring every aircraft is as sharp as it can be. If the Phoenix name means anything, let it light the path for others." The hall was quiet. Then Dalton's voice rumbled like distant thunder spoken, like someone who's buried friends and still chooses to fight differently. Rains studied her, then nodded slowly. "Very well. You'll be given full authority over flight readiness and tactical instruction, not a reinstatement, something broader. Relief mingled with unease across the room. A legend had chosen to stay grounded, but the decision gave Falcon Ridge a new axis. Later, when the crowd dispersed, Kara lingered. She approached Maya outside, where the night air carried the faint rustle of distant pines. "I read the old reports," Kara admitted. "They painted you as reckless as the reason your squadron didn't come home. I believed them." Maya's gaze held steady on the stars overhead. "Reports don't show hesitation. They don't capture the moment you choose wrong. My men waited for me to return, and I didn't. That truth will never leave me." Kara hesitated, then said softly, "But you saved 20,000 civilians that same night. If you hadn't, a city would be ash." Maya turned, eyes fierce but calm, "And 4 pilots would still be alive." The weight of her words silenced Kara. But beneath the heaviness, respect had grown. She realized Maya wasn't chasing redemption. She was carving a new way to serve. The following morning, the base buzzed differently. Mechanics straightened when Maya passed. Young pilots whispered her name not as rumor but as reality. Instructors from other units requested to observe her techniques. She began her work without ceremony, reviewing aircraft maintenance, logs, walking the hangar rows, inspecting every panel and rivet. Her knowledge was meticulous, drawn from years of blending sweat and memory. When recruits gathered on the tarmac, Maya stood before them, not in flight gear but in a simple jacket. She gestured to a parked jet. "Manuals will tell you how systems are supposed to behave. I will show you how they actually behave under pressure. If you can feel when a bird is uneasy, if you can hear the difference between strain and harmony, you'll survive when checklists fail." Her words didn't soar with inspiration, they cut with truth, and the recruits listened, rapt. Dalton watched from a distance, his chest tightening with pride. The Phoenix wasn't just returning to battle, she was reshaping the base itself. But whispers reached beyond Falcon Ridge. Enemy intelligence reported strange combat patterns, impossible maneuvers. Stories spread of a phantom ace who bent the sky itself. Across the border, rival squadrons prepared with unease, their commanders muttering the same name, Phoenix. Back at the base, Rains convened a smaller council. "She draws attention," he warned. "If we're not careful, she'll become both beacon and target." Vega answered firmly. "Then we make sure she isn't standing alone when the storm comes again." Outside, unaware of the council's fears, Maya walked the runway at dusk. She stopped beside a damaged jet, laid a hand on its fuselage, and closed her eyes. In the distance, floodlights lit the field in gold. Around her, mechanics worked late, pilots trained longer, officers stood taller. The base had changed, and though the war had not ended, though new battles loomed, one truth had already taken root: Falcon Ridge had. A guardian, and her wings, though hidden from the sky, now spread across everyone who carried her lessons forward. The sun was high when Falcon Ridge gathered in the briefing hall again, the walls humming with the faint echo of generators and distant turbines. Word had spread far beyond the perimeter fences. Pilots whispered, ground crews stood straighter, and officers carried a sharper edge in their stride. Everyone knew the Phoenix had returned, not to lead squadrons into the clouds, but to forge something new from the ground. Maya Kane stood at the front of the room, her jacket plain, sleeves rolled. On the screen behind her glowed diagrams of flight paths, energy states, and evasive maneuvers. She didn't pace or raise her voice. Her authority was quieter, grounded in certainty. A jet is not a checklist, she told the assembled pilots. It's a living system. Manuals cover procedures. I will teach you survival. Recruits leaned forward, hanging on each word. Veterans, usually skeptical of lectures, scribbled notes. Cara Lawn sat in the second row, her eyes fixed, not as a skeptic now, but as a student relearning how to breathe in the sky. Maya tapped the display, switching to a recording of the spiral fade, the maneuver she had unleashed days earlier. Gasps rippled through the hall as the footage showed her jet climbing, pausing, then dropping in an impossible arc. "This is not a trick," she said. "It is discipline. You must know exactly where your bird breaks. You must ride the edge without crossing it. Fear will tell you to pull back. Courage will tell you to push. But wisdom tells you which to choose." Dalton, sitting at the back, let a rare smile crease his lined face. He had seen many instructors try to impress rookies with theatrics. Maya gave them something rarer, honesty cut to the bone. After the session, young pilots clustered around her, firing questions. One asked about fuel states, another about missile evasion. A third, barely older than a cadet, whispered, "Is it true you once fought alone against a whole squadron?" Maya didn't flinch. "I fought," she said simply. "And I lost people. Remember that. Skill doesn't erase consequence." Her candor hushed the group more effectively than a lecture. Outside, the hangars buzzed with unusual energy. Mechanics repainted tail fins. Crews worked longer shifts, and someone had scrawled a fresh emblem on the wall. A phoenix in crimson, wings spread wide. No one admitted to painting it, but everyone nodded when they passed. Colonel Rains walked beside Vega along the tarmac, speaking low. She refuses promotion, yet she commands the base more than I do. Vega glanced at the hangar, where Maya inspected an aircraft with 2 recruits at her side. Because people believe her, not the title, the person. Rains exhaled. Belief is double-edged. It makes us strong, but it paints a target the size of this base. His concern wasn't misplaced. Intelligence intercepts confirmed what they feared. Across the border, enemy squadrons had pieced together the truth. The Phoenix wasn't a myth, it was a threat reborn. And threats invite retaliation. That evening, while technicians checked the battered Bravo jet, Kara approached Maya. "You could have accepted his offer," she said quietly. "You could be wearing stars right now." Maya's gaze stayed on the fuselage, fingers brushing a dent where shrapnel had kissed the metal. "Stars don't keep you alive. Skill does. Preparation does. I won't climb a ladder of rank while others carry the risk. My place is here, in the grit, making sure no one repeats my mistakes." Kara studied her, torn between admiration and frustration. "You still carry them, don't you? The ones you lost." Maya's eyes hardened, but her voice remained calm. "Every day. And because of that, I'll never send another pilot blind into fire." The next morning, training began in earnest. Maya led them through drills that manuals never mentioned, stall recoveries at dangerous altitudes, energy bleeding tactics, engine-out glides over hostile terrain. She taught them to read the sky like a map and the jet like a pulse. When exhaustion crept in, her words cut through. "The enemy won't wait until you're rested. Neither will gravity." Dalton oversaw quietly, shaking his head in awe. "She isn't just teaching them to fly," he told Vega. "She's teaching them to survive war." By dusk, sweat-soaked pilots limped back from sorties, some shaken, all sharper. They spoke in reverent tones of lessons burned into them, lessons that couldn't be forgotten. That night, the base was restless. Radios carried intercepted chatter. Hostile squadrons were probing closer, testing defenses. Rumors of the Phoenix's return had reached their ears, and they wanted proof. Inside the command center, Rain studied the red marks edging too near their airspace. "They're coming for her," he said grimly. "For the symbol." Vega's jaw tightened. "Then we stand with her." On the far side of the base, Maya sat alone by the wing of a jet, eyes lifted to the stars. She thought of the recruits she had just trained, their faces still bright with youth. She thought of Kara, who carried her own scars but still chose to fly. And she thought of the past, the 4 voices that would never answer roll call again. Her hand traced the emblem painted on the fuselage, the faint outline of the Phoenix. She whispered almost to herself, "If I can't erase the past, I can at least change tomorrow." Floodlights hummed to life, bathing the runway in white. Across the base, whispers stirred as soldiers moved, preparing for what everyone sensed was inevitable. The Phoenix had risen, and the storm would come hunting. Morning came to Falcon Ridge beneath a pale wash of light. The air was sharp, carrying the bite of dew and the faint tang of burnt fuel that never fully left the runways. For the first time in weeks, the base felt almost ordinary. Jets lined the apron, gleaming under the rising sun, and the sound of tools clinking against metal echoed from hangars. Yet beneath the rhythm of daily operations, there was an undercurrent, a pulse of change that everyone felt but few dared to speak aloud. Maya Kane walked the length of the runway with her jacket zipped halfway, hair tied, back simply, and boots scuffed from long days in hangars rather than cockpits. She carried no rank insignia, no medal to signal authority, yet soldiers stepped aside instinctively as she passed. She had become something weightier than a uniform. Ahead, a group of young pilots waited beside a fighter, helmets tucked beneath their arms. One of them, barely out of the academy, shifted nervously on his heels. Another, a woman with streaks of engine grease across her cheek, whispered something that made the others laugh. Their tension eased as Maya approached. She stopped in front of them, eyes moving from face to face. "What did you see in the sky yesterday?" she asked, voice calm. The nervous one cleared his throat. "Hostile pilot cut across our formation. I panicked, pulled up too early, left a gap." Maya studied him, but there was no judgment in her gaze. "And I realized my mistake," he continued, "but by then Bravo lead had already corrected. If that had been combat, I'd have gotten someone killed." Silence stretched for a moment before Maya spoke. "Mistakes are inevitable. Pretending otherwise gets people buried. What matters is whether you learn fast enough to survive the second chance." She gestured toward the jet behind them. "That machine doesn't forgive. So you will train until your reflexes are sharper than fear. That is how you keep each other alive." The recruits nodded, absorbing her words with solemn focus. Kara Lorne, observing from a distance, smiled faintly. The woman who had once been whispered as a ghost had become a mentor of flesh and blood, reshaping the base not with medals, but with lessons hammered by loss. By midday, the base gathered in the mess hall for an unusual assembly. The air was thick with anticipation. Mechanics leaned against walls, pilots crowded benches, and officers stood in the back. Colonel Rains stepped forward, his presence commanding even without a microphone. "We convene today not for ceremony but for acknowledgement," he began. "This base was built on discipline, on sacrifice, and on the skill of those who carry our flag into the sky. But every generation inherits more than tools. They inherit the wisdom of those who came before." He paused, letting the words settle. Then he turned slightly toward Maya, who stood at the side, arms folded, expression steady. "Some truths cannot be hidden, no matter how long we try. The Phoenix has returned, not to seek glory, but to ensure that none of us face the fight alone. Murmurs swept through the hall, pride threaded with disbelief. For years, the Phoenix had been a story told in hushed tones, half myth and half warning. Now the figure stood among them, no longer rumor but reality. Dalton rose from his seat, leaning on his cane as he addressed the crowd.
I've watched pilots come and go for 40 years.
Most were good, a few were great. But what we witnessed, what she showed us, was beyond skill. She turned the sky into her ally. That doesn't just happen. That's legacy. Applause thundered, spontaneous and raw. The recruits clapped hardest of all, their eyes shining. Maya lifted a hand, quieting the noise. Legends don't win wars, people do. You do. If my presence means anything, let it remind you that discipline, preparation, and courage keep you breathing. I can't erase the ghosts I carry, but I can help you avoid making ghosts of each other. The hall erupted again, but this time the sound was tempered by reverence. Days blurred into training and instruction. Maya pushed recruits harder than they expected, drilling them on emergency procedures until exhaustion left them trembling. She showed them how to feel the subtle vibrations of stressed metal, how to hear the difference between a clean engine note and one masking fatigue. She taught them to use the land beneath their wings, to fold valleys and ridges into allies. Her methods were relentless, but results showed quickly. Crews who once flew by rote began adapting instinctively, improvising with confidence. Rains observed a session from the tower and admitted to Vega, she's building something manuals never could. She's teaching them to outlive the fight. Vega replied softly, she's teaching them to believe. Beyond the base, however, the storm gathered. Intercepts confirmed that enemy commanders were unsettled by recent losses. Surveillance chatter carried one repeated phrase, the Phoenix lives. Squadrons drilled harder, planning strikes not against Falcon Ridge itself, but against the symbol that had humiliated them. The weight of expectation pressed on Maya, though she bore it quietly. She spent nights walking the hangar rows, touching the cold fuselages as if grounding herself. Once Kara found her there, staring at an old emblem freshly repainted on a tail fin, the Phoenix with wings aflame. You've changed them, Kara said. Maya shook her head. They changed themselves. I just reminded them they could. Kara hesitated, then asked the question that had burned for days. Do you ever want to fly again? Not for duty, for yourself. For a long moment, Maya didn't answer. Her eyes lingered on the emblem, the paint still glossy under the floodlights. Finally, she whispered, every part of me does, and every part of me knows I can't. My place is here, so they'll never feel the weight I carry. 1 week later, a convoy of recruits prepared for their first solo exercise under Maya's direct instruction. Engines roared to life, turbines whining as aircraft rolled into position. Onlookers gathered, nerves taut. Maya stood on the tarmac, headset pressed to her ear, guiding every step. Check trim, confirm flaps, trust your instruments, but trust yourselves more. One by one, the jets thundered down the strip, lifting into the morning air. Their formations were tighter, cleaner, sharper than before. Watching them rise, Maya felt a strange calm. For the first time since her return, she believed the future might belong to them, not her shadow. Dalton approached, leaning against his cane. They'll carry your lessons longer than any medal. Maya gave a small nod. That's enough. The emblem spread faster than she expected. At first, it was just one painted on a locker door, then another on a mechanic's toolbox. Within days, the symbol appeared stitched onto flight gloves, drawn, in chalk on the runway, carved into wooden benches in the mess hall. The Phoenix was no longer just her, it had become theirs. Even a visiting general, touring the base for inspection, paused when he saw the hand-painted emblem. He touched it thoughtfully and murmured, "I thought this bird was only a myth." Colonel Rain, standing beside him, gestured toward the hangar where Maya instructed a group of recruits. "Some myths walk among us, sir. She doesn't need a stage. She's rebuilding an army." The general watched silently, then gave a single nod. That evening, as the sun fell behind the ridges, Maya returned to her quarters. Inside her locker, she found something unexpected. A small wooden plaque, carved by hand, painted with the image of a phoenix in flight. Beneath it, words etched carefully, "Respect those who hide their wings." No signature, no clue who had placed it there. She traced the grooves with her fingers, her throat tightening. For the first time in years, a true smile broke across her face. Outside, laughter drifted from the mess hall. Recruits swapped stories, mechanics clapped each other on the back, and for once the base sounded alive instead of haunted. Maya set the plaque gently inside her locker and whispered, "Thank you." Later, Kara found her standing on the roof of the hangar, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. She offered one. They drank in silence for a while, watching floodlights spill across the tarmac. Finally, Kara asked, "Do you miss it?" Maya inhaled, the scent of coffee mingling with jet fuel. "Every day. But I've discovered something new. I can protect them here on the ground. Every bolt tightened, every lesson drilled. It saves lives as surely as any missile fired." Kara smiled softly. "You've become their anchor." Maya didn't reply, but she let the words settle. As weeks turned into a month, Falcon Ridge became known as the place that produced the sharpest pilots, not because of hours logged, but because they carried the fire of the Phoenix. Commanders from other bases requested joint drills, recruits volunteered. In droves, and rumors spread even farther. She walks among them. She teaches what no book can. The legend had changed form, no longer just a ghost who returned from exile. Maya Kane had become a guardian of tomorrow. And though the skies would always tempt her, she knew the greater fight was here. Building resilience, forging skill, shaping a legacy that would outlast her. When the wind swept the hangars at night, some swore they could hear the faint echo of engines, ghostly and eternal. But those who trained under her knew the truth. Courage wasn't about never falling. It was about standing again, even when no one was watching. And at Falcon Ridge, under the gaze of a woman who had once buried her wings, a new generation learned to rise. When the skies over Falcon Ridge roared with fire, she answered. When voices cried out in desperation, she rose from the shadows. And when the world thought the Phoenix was gone forever, she chose to return. Not for glory, not for rank, but to ensure no one would face the storm alone. Maya Kane's story is not about perfection, it is about scars, choices, and the courage to step forward even when the past weighs heavy. She carried ghosts, yet she refused to let others join them. By teaching, by guiding, by rebuilding what was broken, she became something greater than a legend. She became a guardian of every life that takes to the sky. And that is the heart of courage, not never falling, but rising again. Stronger, wiser, and willing to protect those who come after. This is VeteranBiker. If Maya's journey moved you, if her stand against fear and regret left a mark, let us know in the comments below. Tell us where you're watching from, and share which moment of her story struck you deepest. Thank you for riding with us. Subscribe, like, and stay with VeteranBiker for more stories of resilience, redemption, and the heroes who refuse to quit.